Shalom, damn it. Hello, everybody. This is your old pal, Rabbi Sol Solomon, founder and spiritual leader of Temple Sons of Bitches in Great Neck, New York. And I am so thrilled and so delighted to be talking with our very special guest. He is a playwright and also a writer of fiction and also a builder of very strange Legos in the back of, what is that behind you there? Are those CDs? Do you still listen to CDs? What are those? By the way, that's Charles L. Mee we're talking to. Shalom! How are you?
Hi, good to see you.
Good to see you too. So what is that? What are those towers behind you there?
You'll have to ask my wife. That's her gift. Yeah.
Well, bring her in, but I think it looks like those old CD towers in a weird sort of a way. But let me give you a proper introduction. Charles L. Mee, veteran playwright, novelist, nonfiction writer, ranging from American political history to such plays and dramatic works as Vienna Lusthaus, always like a little lust in there, The Big Love, Bob Rauschenberg America. He's done a bunch of work with On Guard Arts, that company as well. He is a two-time winner of the Obie Award, the Village Voice Off and Off-Broadway Award, a Penn Award winner. So, hey, he has one of these. This is exciting. And the winner of the American Academy of Arts and Letters Lifetime Achievement Award. Won't you please welcome to the neighborhood on this Sukkot holiday, Charles L. Mee. Shalom to you.
Hey, thank you, and to you.
Thank you. So how are you? The question we ask everybody, you feeling okay? You've come through this whole time unpandemicked?
Well, you know, it's almost like a normal playwright's life for me. I sit at my desk, I look out the window, so I'm fine.
Well, thank God. This is wonderful. This is good. Now, and I hope you don't mind me asking and jumping into this question already in terms of health and things, but when you were much younger, was it polio that you suffered? So it's rather interesting that so many of your plays are so physical and so visceral. Was that intentional kind of reaction to having to deal with such physical issues, both in early life and later life as well?
I don't think it was intentional. I think it just happened. I mean, when I was a kid, I played football. I played football, basketball, track, all those things. And then I got polio when I was 14. And for quite a while, I was lying in bed and all I could move were these three fingers.
That's enough to make a girl happy, by the way, just so you know. But all right, but then you did physical rehab and you got better and better and better?
Yeah. But then I spent most of my life on crutches, and now I'm in a wheelchair. So yeah, I love to have a vicarious physical life, which I do in the theater, and so when I go to see my own plays, I get to see all these actors doing stuff on stage that is still there in my head.
And there's no jealousy involved. There's no feeling of like, oh my God, when I was playing football, I could have done X, Y. No, you just feel like, hey, I can watch them do it and feel almost in a way like I'm doing it. And I can, right. I'm in a way telling them what to do in the script. Yeah, they're an extension of you, if you will.
I am doing it. I did it in my head, didn't I?
By the way, may I call you Chuck? Because I know your friends call you Chuck, but I don't want to impede or what's the word?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so Chuck, if I may also say, one thing I didn't know is that because you came to, let's say, the fore of a greater consciousness in the theater world, kind of later in life with The Big Love and Actors Theater of Louisville, didn't realize that you had started really back in the early days of the off-Broadway movement of La Mama and of Theater for the New City and of Cafe Chino. So do you have any anecdotes or stories of what it was like to be doing theater back then when people were just kind of throwing up anything at the wall and seeing what stuck?
Yeah, oh, I loved that. That was wonderful.
So what's a memory of like doing a show in the early days of Ellen Stewart's La Mama, let's say, or you know, Crystal Field's New City, something like that?
Well, in the early days, I did 3 short plays. And they were put on, called 3 by Me. And the co-producers were Andre Gregory and Michael Kahn. who, I don't know if Michael is still the head of the Shakespeare Theater in Washington, D.C. But anyway, and a couple of the actors were Roscoe Lee Brown, who was,
Yes.
and James Earl Jones.
Good Lord. This was off, or was this off-Broadway? This was what?
Off-Broadway. And
Do you have any memories of Roscoe Lee Brown and James Earl Jones? Any funny stories of them in rehearsal or telling jokes or telling their memories?
No, it was wonderful. But I mean, you know, it was like they were young actors just starting out. I mean, this was one of the first plays Roscoe, not Roscoe Lee Brown, but James Earl Jones. It was one of his first plays. So
this was before the Great White Hope even. This would have been mid-60s? Like, wow.
Like 1961, I think it was.
How old, none of my business, but how old, are you almost 80?
Oh, no, I'm way beyond 80. I'm 82.
Mazel, McGlick, and looking wonderful, by the way. You look fantastic and healthy and terrific. So what made you want to go and get into part of that scene, along with, you know, the John Guares and the Sam Shepherds and the Maria Elena Forneses? How did you get sucked into that world?
Well, you know, I think I started writing plays when I was about 4 years old. Coming home from the playground, I would think, oh, gee, when he said that, I should have said this. Oh, and then he would have said that. Oh, so I would have said this. So I think I was writing plays before I knew how to put a pencil on paper. And then when I was in college, one of the people who was in college with me was a guy named Steve Aaron, and he came to New York and he connected with these guys who were just starting this off-Broadway theater. So he brought me into it. And this is how I almost have never done anything except work with friends. I almost never give a play to a stranger. And it's because of that experience.
Yeah, but that's not true. This is not you. Among many other playwrights are very well known from like a decade ago of saying, you know what, I'm going to put my plays on the internet, the scripts of them anyway. And any stranger can have those. Forget the equity rules or the Dramatists Guild. You want to play, just tell me you're doing it, you know, or read it, enjoy it. What was the mindset behind that when other playwrights were so worried, you know, about people stealing, quote unquote, their work and just doing it without royalties?
Well, that happened because a friend of mine named Robert Woodruff, director, got a call one day from Gordon Davidson, who was running the Mark Taper Forum in Los Angeles. And Gordon Davidson told Woodruff that suddenly he was expecting to do a workshop, and then those guys weren't able to do it. Would he like to do a workshop? And he said, sure. So he phoned me, because we were friends, and he said, so I have this chance to do a workshop. What have you got? I said, I don't have anything. He said, well, we should do something because there's a chance. I said, well, then maybe we should just start with something that exists, and then we'll play with it. He said, okay, like what? And this was a time of a war in Iraq. And I said, oh, okay, how about we take a Greek play with some war going on, like Orestes? He said, okay. So I said, so you take Orestes and start doing it with the actors out in Los Angeles. I can't go, I have to stay here in New York at my job, but I'll fax some pages to you that you can stick into it. So he said, okay. So he went out and he started doing this workshop, and I started faxing stuff to him that you could stick into it. That was what? Well, stuff from today. What? From the newspaper, from TV shows, from stuff about Iraq, from soldiers coming home, from soldiers saying how it was. And so he did all that, and then he brought back this pile of paper and handed it to me, and he said, here it is. And I thought, oh, what am I, this is just a pile of junk. What am I going to do with this? I thought, oh, okay. Take out the original play and then just put together the pages you have left that you were going to put in between the other scenes. So that was my version of Orestes. And then I thought, and then a friend of mine said, oh, you know, the CIA has a website at this university in Illinois, I think it was.
Wait, the CIA, so the Central Intelligence, yeah.
And he said, and I think we can put something on it, and then people could read it. So I said, okay.
I hope they're bugging this conversation. Yeah, right. And
so then I thought, and I stole this Greek play, and then I stole all of this material about the Iraq War out of newspapers and TV shows. Am I going to copyright that in some old-fashioned way? No, I mean, it's my version. So if somebody does exactly my version, then maybe they should get in touch with me. But if they just want to take this stuff and do whatever they want to do with it, they should be free to do that. So we put it on the computer before there was a real internet, and that became my website that I put other plays of mine on. And so I think this was back.
Well, it would have been 15, 20 years ago at least. I mean, maybe 25 almost.
I think it was like maybe 30 years ago.
Yeah.
It was before there really was an internet. I had a website.
Do you think that it led to more productions of your plays in, small theaters and community places and certainly student stuff? Do you think it got a lot more play of your plays?
No question. And around the world, because I mean these days, somebody in China, Korea, Berlin, wherever can take it off the website and do it.
And you're fine with that. You're thrilled, as a matter of fact, no matter how they, because,
So if there are some young people who like to do stuff in a bar in Seattle on a Saturday night, they can just take something off my website and do it, steal whatever they want and do it.
Do you need to be notified? You don't get like a $15 reward. You just like go.
So, go do it. It usually happens though that if there's a theater that wants to do it, and it's a big enough theater to have a board of directors that has a lawyer on their board of directors, they'll say, well, we better get in touch with the playwright. And so then
that's more normal because you're known. You're not just an unknown playwright throwing plays on the web. I mean, you have a track record both as a playwright and as a writer of books as well. Yeah. So let's bring this forward. Let's roll it back, if you will. You're this kid, you're playing football, then you get hurt, etc., and somehow you wind up in Harvard. What happened? What were you studying there? What were political science or something? How did you get to Harvard?
Sure, political science.
I think it's, yeah.
And then when I came out, well, I mean, what happened first of all was when I was in college, I was directing some plays. I was directing a couple of plays by Brecht, and the leading expert on Brecht at that time was a guy named Eric Bentley, who was
right. He just died like a couple of weeks ago. Yeah.
No, right. And he was a professor at Columbia. So I came down to New York to talk to Bentley about Brecht. And over the few years that I was in college, I got to know him fairly well. So when I was finishing college, he said to me, so you want to be a playwright? I said, yeah. He said, well, you should get a job to support yourself that doesn't have anything to do with words, but that has to do with numbers, so you don't wear yourself out. So I said, oh okay. So I went down to Merrill Lynch, Pierce, Fenner & Smith on Wall Street, and I got a job to be a trainee as an investment analyst. And then after I was there for a few months, my boss called me into his office and he said, now you're doing really well. So we were looking again at your application. And I see that when you were in college, you never took an economics course. I said, yeah, that's right. He said, well, we think that you should really go to graduate school now and do some economics, and Merrill Lynch will pay your fees for that.
And you said, yeah.
I said, thank you. And then I left his office and I thought, well, now I won't have time to write any plays anymore because I was working during the day and writing at night. And now
And now you have to take classes and study, and then you wouldn't have, of course, yeah. So did you have a come to Jesus moment, if you will, a decision to make?
well, I thought, gosh, what was Eric Bentley thinking that he gave me this advice? And I thought, oh yeah, that old commie, he thought it was a joke and I didn't get the joke. So I got home and I found out that somebody I knew worked for a little publishing company called American Heritage. So I asked for an introduction to them, and I got a job there, and then I worked in publishing.
Oh my gosh! So you've been comfortable all your life. So you may have turned down hundreds of thousands of you could have been working at Merrill Lynch, making X amount, but you seem like you had a steady gig. How long did you work for American Heritage?
Well, in a way, I had a steady gig. I mean, so I worked for American Heritage, which also had a magazine called Horizon, which was a magazine of art, history, archaeology, anthropology, everything, heavily illustrated. And I worked my way up and became editor of that.
Well,
but then I was getting very involved in anti-Vietnam War politics. So I left my job at American Heritage to write citizen activist books about American international relations.
Such as, give us some titles, please.
Well, The Genius of the People, about the Constitutional Convention. The End of Order, about the peace conference at the end of World War I. Meeting at Potsdam, about the peace conference at the end of World War II. Other stuff like that about how America behaved in the world and how America should behave in the world.
Good luck with that. Yes.
And then I got good reviews and began to get some reviews that said, it reads like a novel, it reads like a novel. And I thought, oh, I should write a novel. So I wrote a novel. I lived off credit cards for a year.
So wait, you had to stop working for the publishing company in order to write the, yeah.
Yeah. So I was no longer working for the publishing company and no longer writing
Plays.
Books that were selling and making money. I was working on this novel now. Yeah, plays had been long gone.
Right. Yeah.
Since I started doing anti-Vietnam War activities, I didn't have time to do any plays. So then I worked on this novel for a year and lived off credit cards. And then the doorbell rang and I was handed a piece of pink paper, 8.5 by 14 inches, that said the sheriff would come next Wednesday and auction off my furniture for the non-payment of taxes.
Oh, taxes. Yeah.
But, oh boy, this is the low point. And so I reread my novel and thought, oh, and this is junk. So I took it out to the corner and threw it in the trash can.
No! You were not even a copy. You didn't, because this was pre-computer. This would have been, you didn't go to pre-Kinko's and Xerox. It was your only, and what happened then?
Then the next morning I woke up and I thought, there was stuff in that novel just that I wanted to remember from my own life. So I went out to the trash can to get it and it was gone.
Of course.
So then I came back home and sat down at my desk and thought, well, I should make some notes just about the stuff I want to remember for myself, not for anybody else. Now, it won't be a novel, it won't be anything, but just for my own self. And so I began to write my notes. And that took the form of a trilogy of one-act plays that I wrote in 10 days. And I thought, oh, I get it. When I just do what I want for myself, what I love to do, this is it. So I'm going back to writing plays.
But wait, I got to ask you then and make the jump here. I mean, there's still that piece of paper. Did you suddenly also say to myself, I better get a job real quick so I can just pay my taxes? I mean, because what I don't understand is you said 1 year you wrote a novel. You know, 1 year you don't pay it shouldn't have suddenly had a backlog where you didn't pay your annual income tax and the sheriff is suddenly coming for your stuff. Am I missing something here? How did you go years as a scofflaw, as it were?
Well, a couple of years anyway, because of my income from being an anti-war activist and a writer of political stuff wasn't so profitable.
Really? Go figure. Yeah, all right. So what did you do to first of all, to keep yourself out of hock and jail?
Well, I went to the IRS office and I said to them what I was doing and could they give me a break and could I pay it monthly over a period of time? And so we made a deal.
Good. Well, all right. So smart. Very good. So, but did you again? I mean, you wrote one-act plays, Mazel Tov, and that started you back on the theater path. But how did you pay your bills at that point, week to week, month to month? Did you take another publishing gig?
Yeah. So then I went back and got another publishing job.
Oh.
And then, but also, I had this play that I had written, and I didn't know what to do with it, because I didn't know anybody in the theater anymore. I'd been away from writing anything in the theater for 20 years. And so I thought, well, there's one guy I know who's in the theater. He works in that Xerox shop around the corner from where I live. And he has something to do with the theater. So I'll take it to him. So I took my script and I went into the Xerox shop and I said, hey, I wrote a play. He had been Xeroxing my political stuff for quite a while. I said, hey, I wrote this play and now I don't know what to do with it. Do you know what I could do with it? And he reached out and took it out of my hand and said, oh, I'll give it to my friend Joe Papp at the Public Theater. And that was Wally Shawn.
No, did you hear the other part of that? That person was Wallace Shawn. Oh my goodness, inconceivable. That Wallace Shawn, my gosh.
So that was my lesson too. Only ever, when you write a play, only ever give it to somebody you know.
And I hope actually the first thing that Wally Shawn did with it was make a fucking copy so that you could have one in case one got lost or you threw it in the garbage. And then he took one and he gave it to Joe Papp and Papp read it and you got it. Did you get done in the Public Theater?
So then I got a phone call. I was Joe Papp. Hi, I like your play. Now all we need is a director. I have a director, Martha Clark.
Oh my goodness.
So he made a lunch date for me with Martha Clark. We went out to lunch. Martha said, well, I like your play, but you know, I'm thinking that right now, I want to do this dance theater piece about Vienna back at the turn of the century. I said, oh, I'll write the text for you. She said, no, there's not going to be any text. It's a dance theater piece. I said, no, I'll write the text for you. Don't worry, it'll be okay. So,
okay. And that became Vienna Lusthaus, but yeah.
She said, okay. So that was that.
Well, was it, so wait a minute, you go from writing very personal though, one-act plays about your experience, about your life. Was it very different to get into a different mindset where it's a piece about Vienna, you know, Belle Epoque, I forget what time it really took place, that has nothing to do with your life at all?
Well, but it had to do with feelings and thoughts and stuff that
that's the good stuff, and always stuff, yes.
That resonated with me in one way or another. And I decided also, I didn't know anything about Vienna, so it couldn't have a plot line of any kind. And anyway, if there was going to be a lot of dancing going on, you couldn't make a well-made play. So what would you have? You'd have a bunch of pieces of text that you'd stick in here and there. Well, what would be the thing that would hold it together or make it feel as though it was going from here to here to here to here? Yeah. Spring, summer, autumn, winter. Hitler arrives, end of the play.
And that tends to be winter. But let me ask you though, that you bring this up of this idea of a well-made play. Now you have taught playwriting at Columbia University. Are you still teaching, in fact, at Columbia University playwriting? So when you have these young 19, 20-year-old bright, talented kids coming at you, are the expectations, I mean, do you have to teach them the well-made play? But what do you do when you have people who don't write that, but they don't want to write that. They want to write something more amorphous and dancey? Or how do you critique? How do you do it?
No. I say to them that I hope they'll do what I do, which is you just write what you love. And since you're the world's leading expert on what you love, you can't be wrong.
That's wonderful. But how do you do that for 16 weeks? What do you when someone hands you a script, what do you tell them?
Oh, well, then we do a lot of, to begin with, we do a lot of exercises that most of us have been raised in this world of the play that goes cause, effect, cause, effect, cause, effect. A causes B, causes C, causes D. And that's kind of traditional realism. But as I say to them, but you know, the Greeks, they did the principal family advances the plot, the principal family advances the plot, then the chorus riffs on that. Principal family advances the plot, the chorus riffs. So the chorus riffing, that can be talking or singing or dancing or performance art, whatever you want. That's what it was. And that, in a way, is the model of the American musical. People do stuff and then they sing a song and dance. People do stuff and then they sing a song and dance.
I mean, isn't it true that the Greeks, they would do a terrible, sad tragedy and then bring a giant penis out on stage and dance around it for the finale? I mean, I'm not joking, this is true.
Yeah. And so then as you go through the history of the theater, you see, yeah, the principals advance plot, principals advance the plot. Shakespeare has subplots, which are like choruses. Then you get to Henrik Ibsen, and he just has principals advance the plot, principals advance plot, principals advance plot, no chorus. And then you get to Pina Bausch in Germany, and it's just the chorus riffs, the chorus riffs, the chorus riffs, the chorus riffs. So I say to the students, so you can do anything. You can have both, you can have one, you can have the other. You can do whatever you want, whatever you love. So then we do usually exercise.
What a wonderful way of looking at the history of theater. I mean, I've never thought of it that in that sense of it. You know, it's either you've got the well-made play or you've got the play that's kind of avant-garde and abstract. There's not this sense of, oh, principal family and or subplots and or, oh, the chorus riffing or a mixture of all that. You just blew my mind, Charles. Chuck. Me.
Yeah.
By the way, speaking of something that has a mix of all these kinds of things, we want to let people know that your new play, Utopia, is going to be done virtually by, and I hate to say the name of this troupe, Cutting Ball Theater, because as someone who moonlights as a mohel, ball cutting is not a good thing, but it's the Cutting Ball Theater that is doing your play, Utopia, which is mixing, it's like there's animation, there's dance. Tell us about this show.
Well, and that okay. It starts out, it's about a young girl and her mother go to a cafe for coffee and ice cream. And they get to listen to all the other people in the cafe having conversations. And the people are Black and white and Asian and South American and Indian and straight and gay and lesbian and young and old. And but none of them happen to mention that at all. They're not denying any differences in race and gender and age, but they're not living in a world where these are difficult issues that need to be addressed. They live in the world that has evolved beyond that to a place where everyone is living together and feeling good together and just needing to talk about food and tea and love. And this is Utopia.
That's so cool. That's so sweet.
This is the world where the 9-year-old wants to live in, the world that really feels good to everyone. So of course they sing and dance and they eat croissants.
Okay. Or did you know that Popeyes is now doing chocolate beignets? That was in the news. It says, Papp, where you can get your fried chicken and your Louisiana beignet. Does life get better than that? That's Utopia for me, ladies and gentlemen, even though it's not kosher, don't tell anybody. But when they do your show, is it going to be the unavoidable, what we're doing now, the box, like the two people in the cafe are on top and then the other people in the cafeteria or the coffee shop or around them in boxes? Or are they advancing this whole Zoom form of theater now?
See, how would I know? Because years ago, wandering around Europe, seeing stuff, I thought, oh, the playwrights who get the best productions are the dead playwrights. Maybe that's because they don't go to rehearsal. So the director and the actors are free to do whatever they want. So ever since then, I've never gone to a rehearsal of any of my plays. And
You have no idea what they're gonna do. You come cold to, you watch it the opening night.
I'm there for opening night, and that's fun for me because I haven't seen it.
Yeah, what a wonderful attitude you have about so many of these things. I mean, if they were doing a play of mine, and I've done a play of mine, believe me, and I shout at myself during rehearsal. I'm like, oh, I did that wrong, and over and over again when I was doing Shalom, damn it. But this is a wonderful thing of this idea of like, I'm a viewer now. Yeah, I wrote it. It's in the ozone. Take it. Let me see. Let me sit back and what are you going to do? What a fabulous idea. But have you ever been really angry or upset or disappointed when they took one of your work and you were like, oh, gewalt?
Oh yeah, sure. So when you do it this way, you get some really bad productions, and you get some really great productions, and you get some in between.
Well, like everything else, you can be in rehearsal and get the same exact thing. Can I ask? Are you a viewer of Zoom theater? Do you take the time to watch other people's plays now in the 6 months since March, when all theater has essentially been this? Have you seen any? Have you liked any?
I haven't done it a lot. I've done it a little bit, but not a lot.
I'm wondering about like the Richard Nelson plays, for example. Those seem to be the first thing that people mention of the family dynamic, because it reminds me a little bit of your coffee shop idea of just people, not big Sturm und Drang or this idea of Deus Ex Machina. No big stuff happens, just little emotional undercurrents.
Right.
Have you seen that or others like that?
Oh, well, I hope I'm about to see it.
in your own show. So we're talking, by the way, with Chuck, me, and about working only with all the stuff that you've done, except when people take your stuff and show you it, you've worked with or through friends, which is wonderful. But you have also worked through family. How is it collaborating on some level, which you've done a few times with your daughter?
I love it. I really love it, yeah. And she's doing a kind of theater that I love, too.
Which is?
Well, she has her own theater company called This Is Not a Theater Company, because they never perform in a theater, only in swimming pools and on the Staten Island ferry and in people's living rooms and on the subway.
This is actually going to be the next wave of theater when theater comes back in New York before Broadway does. That's what people will be doing anyway. She was ahead of the curve. So, yeah. And she's done your work. So, I mean, but do you feel, again, you're not part of the rehearsal process, so you don't work with her. You just give her a play and say, go ahead, and then you come and look?
Yeah.
But do you have any criticism? When you see it, can you say, this I didn't like, or you're just like, oh, it's wonderful. Thank you. I love you, my daughter.
Well, in fact, I always do love it. I mean, don't forget, we grew up together, my daughter and I.
I would hope so, yeah.
So we have a lot of the same tastes and impulses and instincts and stuff like that. And so it's like, production it's almost as good as if my own daughter directed it.
Well, let me ask you a question here. We're talking with Chuck Mee, the playwright of Utopia, by the way, which is being done by Cutting Ball Theater, which is going to be, they'll have a premiere and then people can see it for a couple of weeks, right? It won't just go away. It's like a one-night thing, right?
I think for a month, yeah.
For a month, you can go see that. But let's move on to a couple of other sort of side questions that I couldn't sneak in there in other ways. So I'm just going to throw them out at you. You wrote a book about H.R. Haldeman of the Watergate. What did you learn from talking with and writing about H.R. Haldeman, about yourself, about America, about politics, if anything?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, because among the other sort of political activities I was involved in back in the day, I was the founder and chairman of the National Committee on the Presidency, formed to impeach Richard Nixon. And so, because I was working in publishing, we knew how to do direct mail campaigns and I knew how to get writers and designers and other people to make stuff to send out. And the strategy was, the zip code had just recently been invented. And I realized that, oh, yeah, you can match up congressional districts and zip codes. So you could find the congressional districts of the key swing votes on the House Judiciary Committee to bring a bill of impeachment. So you could mail out fundraising money to Democratic districts all around the country to raise money to then be able to mail more mail to the congressional districts that were the key votes on the Judiciary Committee. And you would get a lot of statistics about the people who lived there being pro-impeachment. And then we would go down to Washington, knock on the door of the congressperson who was in that congressional district and say, look, this is what your constituents are thinking, that you ought to vote in favor of impeachment. So that was a big campaign that we did.
Did it work? I mean, well, Nixon was almost impeached, would have been, but do you think all those efforts actually made a diff? Did it work?
Oh yeah, I mean, they voted then in the articles of impeachment. They were brought before the House, and then Nixon resigned because he saw.
So he would have been. So, but let me ask. I mean, I love this idea that obviously you are as comfortable with numbers as you are with words. And I want to go back to that actually. That whole that thing you learned from, I think it was Bentley. I don't know if he was joking, because this idea that Tennessee Williams used to write, as he mentioned in the play, he would write things on the lid of a shoebox to help him, and he would just sell shoes all day and then go home and write. Whereas if he had a writing job all day, he wouldn't go home and write. He'd do anything but. Did you find that it turned out to be true and it wasn't a joke? Like when you have to do stuff and work in words and publishing all day, you wouldn't want to go home and write?
I actually was fine publishing and writing together.
And also manipulating the numbers. So what have the Democrats been doing wrong for 4 years? Why, of all the things that they try to get rid of Trump for various reasons, right or wrong, everything they've been doing has just pretty much been failing, right?
It seems odd to me. I don't understand why they haven't developed a strategy as smart as I was. And I'm stupid. I mean, I don't know anything about politics.
Well, you're Harvard stupid, but all right, yeah.
I mean, I don't know why they didn't figure out what was a strategy that would get them the votes that would get them there.
Right. Because obviously the popular vote doesn't mean anything anymore. you gotta get the vote in the right districts. You could have been, but are you still? I mean, I imagine you're not a Trump supporter, but are you still political in any way? Are you active? Or you're just like, I'll vote, but that's it.
Yeah, that really is now. I mean, I spent so much of my life doing citizen politics that, okay, I've done my public duty and now I get to do my private pleasure. Yeah.
Well, let me ask, of all the plays that you have written, which would be the one that you are closest to? Do you have a favorite child, in a manner of speaking?
That's too hard. I have a bunch of favorites, I think. I mean, I do love a piece called Big Love, which is...
in some ways, your most well-known piece.
Yeah.
It was a piece that really put you in, shall we say, the consciousness of theater in America, Big Love, which was done in Louisville and was done in New York, and it's an adaptation of Greek. Which play or plays was it?
Well, people used to think it was the oldest Greek play that still existed, but now more recent scholarship thinks maybe it's the second oldest. And it's from a trilogy called the Danaids. And so the Suppliant Women is one of those three plays. And of the three plays, one of them was totally lost. So my play is the lost play.
They found the fragment, and that idea of the fragment influenced you too. Yeah. And by the way, who doesn't love Suppliant Women? I know I do. It's a wonderful thing. I'm kidding. But but that play, was it because it changed your life as a playwright, or you just felt somehow this is the one that is the most me MEE and ME.
Well, I love it. Yeah. I mean, it feels as though it has a storyline, but also it's got a lot of tremendous amount of physical activity and women throwing themselves to the floor, men throwing themselves to the floor, a guy throwing saw blades into the wall, a lot of.
And let's not forget nudity. It depends on who produces it, but nudity, yeah. So Big Love is kind of your closest baby, even though on some level you must love them all. We've been talking with Chuck Mee. He is the author of, well, the new play Utopia that is going to be produced by Cutting Ball Theater. I actually have the dates on this. It's from October 16th through November 15th. Just look for Cutting Ball Theater on the web. But before we let you go, and of course, thank you so much for being so delightful and so open about your life and what you do, let me ask you at this stage and age, how much of your day is set aside? I mean, do you have a regimen for when you write or for when you write plays? And also, are you more of a writer of plays or an editor? I mean, do you spend X amount of time just doing the first draft and then all this extra time cutting it and shaping it and throwing out and doing? Or are you more like mostly writing and then go back and edit a little, but you kind of get it in the first or second go?
Well, yeah. I mean, back in the early day, I had a really great discipline. I got up at 7 o'clock in the morning. I was at my desk at 8 o'clock with a cup of coffee, and I started writing, and I drank 4 or 5 cups of coffee in the morning and worked until noon. Stopped at noon, had lunch from noon to 1, back to my desk at 1 o'clock, and then I left my desk at 3 o'clock so that I wouldn't try to be writing when I was tired out.
Right.
Then go out to art galleries in the afternoon, and then, of course, have a crash because I hadn't had any coffee, so drink some more coffee. And then by 5 o'clock, with the second bunch of coffee, I'd attack the first person who came into the room. So I finally managed to give up drinking coffee.
Oh my goodness.
But
You must have headaches. Oh my God.
Yeah. But as time went on, my sense of schedule and discipline began to disappear. And now all I have is this obsessive compulsive disorder where I have no schedule of any kind whatsoever. But I'll get up in the morning, and if I'm thinking of something, I'll make some notes about that. And then I'll go and have breakfast, and then, maybe I'll make some notes while I'm having breakfast. And then maybe I'll go out somewhere to do something. I'll think of something, so I'll get out my cell phone and send myself a text message. And so I'm doing this all day. I'm doing whatever. And then, at some point I might end up back at my desk for a few hours. But that might be 2:30 in the afternoon or 10 o'clock at night. I don't know. And it's just a total obsessive compulsive disorder. I can't stop writing. I keep saying to myself, you should stop, because by the end of the year, I've written more than I should have.
Is there such a thing?
Yeah. I mean,
Andy Warhol would say, well, you wrote 10 plays this year, you should have written 15. You know,
but there are many, many, many years where I've written 3 plays a year. And most playwrights,
that's a lot. Yeah.
Most playwrights write maybe 1 play every 3 years.
Right.
And I was writing 3 plays in 1 year, year after year after year. And I can't stop. You would think at my age I'd be mature enough to be able to slow down, but I can't. And
you're only 82, dude. You could live to 112 for all you know.
And I don't write. I don't write a first draft, second draft, third draft. I only ever write 742 drafts all at the same time. You know, I'm writing something, and then on the computer I'll think, this should go at the end. I'll cut, paste, move it toward the beginning.
Right.
That could go with this scene. So I'm writing and rewriting at the same time. And
but the stuff that, may I ask, the things that you are writing now, post-Utopia, as it were, are you thinking in terms of just theater the way it was half a year ago, to, in an off-Broadway house or in some regional theater or in a storefront perhaps? Or has the past 6 months said, well, why am I writing for that? I need to be writing for my daughter to do this in a sweat, or, yeah. I mean, or, do you co-write with your daughter ever? But point is, are you still in the mindset of, a year from now, it'll be in a regular theater, or your brain doesn't work that way,
No.
What?
I just write whatever I want to write. And I mean, the truth is I'm not usually being very logical and reasonable. I'm usually sort of seeing stuff happening on stage. And then this happens and that happens, and then he says this. And then she says that, okay. And then he does this. He should have done that earlier.
But you're not tempted to specifically write for the Zoom form. Nothing like that. You're still writing in that way of characters happening, talking to each other, dancing, doing something else, and coming out of that in some kind of theater space, even if we're not talking, of course, a Broadway proscenium, but in a theaterish space rather than this digital, sphere of boxes, even though obviously directors are welcome to take your work and do it in that Zoom way.
Well, yeah, I mean, another piece that's about to come on video on October 11th, I guess it is. Or is it 16th? Anyway, a couple of years ago, I was at a dinner party for an old friend of mine, a director named Tina Landau. And I met another friend of hers, a woman named Elizabeth Streb, who has a company of acrobats in Brooklyn.
Right. Yeah.
And we had a really fun conversation. And I said, we should have lunch sometime, not for business, but just for the fun of it. So we went out to lunch a little while after that. And then I couldn't help myself. I said, Elizabeth, what would be fantastic is your acrobats are flying through the air, and it's beautiful and ecstatic, fantastic, and scary and horrible. And then there are a few actors standing around talking about love. She said, I'd love to do that, but I don't work with actors. We need a director. I said, yeah, how about Anne Bogart? She said, I'd love to work with Anne Bogart. So I got the cell phone out of my pocket. Hello, Anne. Blah, 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 blah. I'd love to do that. Good, done. So we did it last year at the Peak Performance Festival in New Jersey. And it is people flying through the air and falling and stuff going on like that.
And your text, you wrote the love stuff.
And then there's actors occasionally coming here or there, talking about love or having a relationship or having an argument.
And you're saying this has been recorded and they're going to be premiering or they'll put it on the web. What is the name of it?
It's going on WNET.
On Channel 13. Wow. Yeah.
It's called Falling in Loving.
Falling in Love. I love it.
And loving.
Falling and loving. Sorry about that. Yeah, so everybody goes.
Falling in love. Yeah. So yeah.
Go see don't go see it. It'll come to you if you have Channel 13 or 13 on the web, WNET. But this piece by Charles Mee, and of course also Utopia from him and Cutting Bowl Theater. Chuck, it just remains for me to first of all thank you ever so much for taking this time to be taking time out of. I'm sure while we've been talking, I should write something about a rabbi. All right, let me make a note. In the back of your head, I got a crazy rabbi who shouts a lot. There's something in this, and people falling and dancing while he's doing it. There you go.
No, but he's writing stuff for himself, and I've seen it, and it's terrific. So I don't have to write stuff for him, although that would be fun for sure.
Well, that's it. Boy, I'm blushing, and all four cheeks, let me tell you. Chuck Mee, it has been so delightful having you in the neighborhood. I wish you, of course, good health. I wish you so much good theater, and maybe you don't want to do this, but I hope you write 4 plays next year and 5 plays the year after that, and they're all done in wonderful ways by wonderful people. Chuck, stay well. Thank you for being with us in the neighborhood.
This has been a total pleasure. Thanks a lot.
And shalom to you.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye now. Oh, my friends, Chuck me, with me, Rabbi Saul, in the neighborhood on this Shabbos, this Sukkot Shabbos of 2020, October 3rd. Oh, wasn't that delightful? Oh, wasn't that so lovely talking to this playwright and gentleman? I gotta say, you know, usually I don't like Goyim, but this guy, he is all right by me. Well, and he's saying like my play, so that's certainly all right by me. Get it? By me, M-E-E, me. That's kind of funny.